Hello, everyone. Welcome to Court with Krissy. There's something about this small claims court case that doesn't sit right with me, and it goes beyond the fact that the retired judge and former federal prosecutor are friends. Watch and see. Do you agree? And FYI, this was Wednesday, November 13th, 2 days after Veterans Day. While the judge's comment makes it sound like he doesn't appreciate the holiday, I appreciate all the men and women who have served our country or are serving our country. Thank you for your service. I hope you like it. Court with Krissy is now in session.
All right, the next matter, Michael Detmer and Christopher McGregor. Can the parties hear me?
Yes.
And Mr. Detmer, I need you to unmute. Let's see.
Can you hear me now, sir?
Oh, here we go. So, Mr. Detmer, and you've got, who is that with you?
Mr. Colin Brower, who is the contractor on the job.
All right, and we have Mr. McGregor. You're there as well?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, and obviously both of you can hear me. Each of you, or everyone testifying, please raise your right hand. You swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth. Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's see, Mr. McGregor, before we start, I want to tell you, I do know Mr. Detmer. He's an attorney here in Traverse City, and I obviously am a judge, and so we know each other, and you could even say we're friends, although we don't, I haven't seen him in I don't know how many years, but I just want to put that on the record. I'm not recusing myself from this because I don't feel I'm biased for Mr. Detmer and or against you. So, but I just want to let you know that. Okay, Mr. McGregor.
Okay.
Your Honor,
right.
may I only add, I can't really see you, so I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You're far away.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing, actually. But let me just play with this little remote here. They don't really give me too many things to.
I can see and hear you just fine.
Yeah.
All right, then maybe I better leave. I'll leave it the way it is then, okay?
Yeah, I just was asking if you'd identify yourself because I think I can't see you.
Okay, well, my name is Michael Haley, and
sorry, sir.
Michael, this case was probably set originally in front of Judge Stepka, Michael Stepka, and anyway, he's not here and I am, so here we go. So, Mr. Detmer, I've read over your brief, and actually, I didn't see all of the exhibits. However, let me just take a minute to look through those, and then I'll give you a chance to go ahead and summarize the whole thing for me again, okay? Actually, I'm going to speak to these exhibits and just kind of comment on them, and Mr. Detmer, you can correct me if I'm misreading something here, but Exhibit 1 shows is referenced as an agreement, or at least has to do with the agreement that you had with Mr. McGregor, or the agreement that your guy Colin had with McGregor. The issues include decking, labor in full was going to be $6,000 plus materials, and it was supposed to be, there's some details, 4 details that were to be included having to do with some hardscape. It looks like $1,250 paid May 2, another $1,250 paid May 10. I assume that's paid to directly by you to Colin or to you by you to Mr. McGregor.
This agreement, Your Honor, was between me and Colin, and paragraph 4 is the relevant. Is I did not know Mr. McGregor, but through representations he made to my spouse, but I agreed to hire Mr. McGregor through Colin if Colin, under paragraph 4, would be responsible for overseeing and supervision of the work.
Okay, so to that extent, Colin Brower was sort of the general contractor, at least as it relates to the subcontractor, I guess, McGregor. Is that right?
Right, but the
something
agreement was that I would pay through Colin, Mr. McGregor. That written note is my handwriting. After McGregor, the defendant, abandoned the job, I paid Colin an additional $5,000 or $1,250, $3,000, excuse me, to do the work. So I lost 3, paid an additional $2,500, not 3. Does that make sense to you?
Not yet, but I have not done looking at the whole thing yet. So I do see on Exhibit 2 a check. It looks like that you wrote or your wife wrote $4,000 paid to All in One, and that's Colin. That's Colin Brower, right?
Right. Then he withdrew the $4,000 and paid that money directly in cash to McGregor.
The entire $4,000?
Yeah, but then McGregor paid $1,000 to an unrelated individual who was going to assist with the siding problems. So McGregor kept 3, paid 1 to someone else. That's not part of this litigation.
Okay. So the 1,000 McGregor paid to somebody has nothing to do with this. Correct. Is that right?
Correct. Right.
Okay, at least nothing to do with your claim. I do see in exhibit. So exhibit 2 has a photocopy of that check. I referenced also something dated April 1, which looks like a invoice or something. And it says cash on deposit, 50% deck, 3,000, siding 1,000, total due 4,000. So obviously that's represents the 4. That was what the check was for. All right. Exhibit 3. Let's see. Exhibit 2 actually is 2 pages, and that just shows the reverse side of the check.
3 and 4 are the payments of $1,250 each to Colin after McGregor abandoned the job, took the money, and I repaid or paid additional $1,250 in Exhibit 3 and $1,250 in Exhibit 4.
Okay, let's see. So Exhibit 3 shows $985 for materials. I don't know. I'll just read this. 50% deck rebuild, $1,250. Total due $2,235.
Right. So the part of this, these expenses relate to the siding we had to replace, and McGregor
Okay.
had nothing to do with the siding job. He was hired by me to do the deck.
Got it. Okay. All right. In any case, exhibits 3 and 4, the net out of all that is that somehow documents the $12.50 you paid in 2 installments, $12.50 times 2 to Colin Brower, right?
Correct.
All right. Exhibit 5 looks like a police report, heavily redacted.
The exhibit
Home-
five is the defendant's statements to Alan Park,
Okay.
Michigan State Police Officer.
All right. So it looks like Homeland Security came through and
Really?
wiped out this. All right. I'm gonna quick run through that. So, Mr. Detmer, when you hired Colin Brower, aside from Christopher McGregor, how many people were working on that job site?
There was one other individual, Kurt, not Hanson, Kurt Hoffman, who was paid that $1,000 initially, and then worked with Colin, and Colin was paid as the two of them were working together. Mr. McGregor was supposed to be direct on the deck.
All right, exhibit 6 looks like a text message you sent to the defendant.
From Colin.
Basically, pardon?
It's a text message from Colin to the defendant.
Oh, okay.
And I would note, Your Honor, that Tekla, my spouse, and I were out of state when this all was taking place. And
Is that right?
And I did not hear about it until we returned. But Colin was attempting to get my money back, and he had called me. I knew about the $500, and I agreed that we would pay the defendant $500 for the 3 or 4 hours that he was on the job on the initial day. But I didn't, until I gave that authority, I did not know about the $3,000 being absconded. That's just when we got banned.
I tell you what, Mr. Detmer, why don't you? I've got your narrative trial brief. Looks like it's 2 pages. Why don't you go ahead and summarize what's in it? Read from it, whatever you want to do, so that I've got all the facts down here. Like I said, I've run through this once, but go ahead and summarize what you've got there, and then if you want Mr. Brower to testify, then you can do that.
Thank you, Your Honor. The home we live in, we've been here 50 years this summer. And over those 50 years, there was some lower siding wood rot problems. And we had literally a probably 45-year-old entrance deck to the house that both needed replacing. Mr. Brower is the son of Rich Brower, who's a friend, and Colin has great reputation as a carpenter. I hired him. He somewhere along the line met the defendant, had not worked with him before, but representations were made that he was an expert in creating or building decks. And Colin brought him to my attention to determine whether I would hire him to deal with the decking while Colin dealt with the siding. The defendant came over to the home. I was not here at the time, but my spouse Tekla met with him, and they talked through the project. The project was pretty much determined in terms of design, and in fact, it was partially built. I agreed to a oral contract with the defendant that he would do the decking for $6,000. He wanted $3,000 down, $3,000 upon completion. I gave a check to Colin for $4,000 because it also included some siding work with this unrelated individual, Kurt Hoffman. And Kurt Hoffman was a friend of the defendant, and that's how the $4,000 got to the defendant. Defendant, we understand, gave $1,000 to Kurt Hoffman, not involved in any way in this action. In any event, the defendant showed up with a young man, started digging out the deck.
Excuse me, so you were there when that occurred?
I do not believe I was.
I don't recall.
Okay. All right, that's okay.
Tekla was here. I was not.
Okay.
In any event, that they, after partial day's work, left. And then what happened was the defendant made representations to Colin that he had a different, and I don't know if it was better design, but it was certainly a potentially more expensive design. And Colin conferred with us, Tekla and I, and it was really a bizarre, I just couldn't even understand what it would do to the appearance of the house, but he wanted to build an overhang out our front entrance. And I just said, no, just stick to the original design. Colin agreed that it was a little crazy and expensive, and relayed that to the defendant. Colin, under the exhibit 2 or 3, exhibit 1, I agreed originally to hire the defendant so long as I also hired Colin on the side to oversee and supervise the work. And so then, as a result, he never showed up again, never saw him. And Colin had represented to me that he made a number of calls, and then the defendant's number was blocked. I said I would call him. I left 2 voicemails for him. On a third call, or no, I left a voicemail and he called me back, but he would not identify himself, but he told me the phone belonged to his daughter, who is 6 or 7 years old, and that I better not call her again, or I would pay for it. He had some threatening language that sort of pissed me off. But so that's the last I heard of him. Never returned the money, never talked to Colin again, and kept, and Colin had graciously, with my authority, said, keep $500 and return $2,500. That was more than ample money for the hours he was there. And he even reneged on that. He's never returned any money, never made any offer to return the money, and simply gives us $3,000.
Okay. Mr. Brower, anything you want to add or comment about on Mr. Detmer's testimony?
I think that's very thorough. It summarizes what happened quite well.
So how many times did your guy show up, actually? Mr. McGregor, how many times did McGregor show up on the job site, Mr. Brower?
He had showed up once as an initial kind of inspection of work that needed to be done, and we discussed the scope of work. And then as far as days of work, he showed up one time, was here for about 3 to 4 hours, removing gravel from the area underneath the deck that needed to be cleared. And then that was it.
And did you say, Mr. Detmer referenced some side agreement that you, Mr. Brower, may have had with Mr. McGregor? Did you actually wind up giving him $500 for the few hours that he worked?
I did not. I was never contacted from him after that. I was just trying to be fair and pay him for the time that he did work.
Well, if he was going to repay some of the money, which he didn't. That's
correct.
Okay. All right. All right. So, Mr. McGregor, what do you have to say in response? Anything?
Yeah, I have a lot to say, actually. I take offense to the misstatements of fact that are, and the misrepresentations of fact that are being made here today, from somebody who served as a prosecutor. That's highly disheartening. Also, I want to note that I didn't receive any of the exhibits.
Mr. McGregor, hey, you can skip all the personal references and all that. Just get the facts out. And
okay, let me get the facts out. So I'll try to be as factual as possible. I'm sorry, Your Honor. Okay, I met Colin at the Civic Center Park when I was there with my daughter. He was there with his daughter. We started chatting. He was telling me about how he's a contractor and that he has so much work. He doesn't know what he's going to do. He doesn't have enough help to do it. I'm a disabled veteran. I'm retired from the Air Force, honorably served. I was a firefighter. I do deck work on the side to help supplement some income for my family, especially as my wife's on maternity leave right now. I never represented that I was a carpenter or a contractor. I said that I did side work helping people, other contractors usually, to resurface decks, to apply decking, to do some manual labor with some other guys that, also do side work with me on this from time to time, which in this case was Joey Andrews, who was there helping me do demolition on this deck. I showed up to the job site five different times, 4 times before we started working, because every time we would go, Colin and Michael would add more and more tasks to the job. At first, it was just to resurface this deck with the Ipe hardwood that Mr. Detmer had on hand. When I got there, the deck wasn't framed correctly. It was full of gravel. It was full of like mud and ice and all kinds of other things that his previous contractors who didn't finish the job left there in place. So when I got there, there was a framed deck on the ground, not built right, decomposing. There was siding missing off the front of his house. There was Tyvek missing off the side of his house, and there were many other places on the house with the siding that had issues that needed to be remediated. And so I just started trying to come up with an accurate cost estimate for them of what it would take to get all these things fixed. And I would just provide those to Colin. Those weren't like quotes. There was never a contract between me and any of these parties. The day that we did show up to work, I showed up there. We demoed a deck. We moved. Is everything okay?
No, we're having some technical issues. Hang on, I gotta mute somebody, it looks like, because we're going over our time here. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so so for like the first 2 times I came out, we had discussions with Colin. Then I met Michael and his wife, and they walked us around the house and showed us all these different parts of the house that were unrelated to why we were there, consuming hours of our time as we walked around the house discussing what their hopes were for our labor. The labor costs just kept going up based on all these things they'd add, and I was just relaying this to Colin and communicating with Colin. The conflict.
I'd kind of like to hear about the 3,000. Did you get 3,000 from them?
No, I was never given 3,000 from them. I was given $1,500 on the day that I worked. I split that with the guy who was digging with me. As far as I understand, Colin paid Kurt Hoffman directly. I never gave Kurt any money. I also am not friends with Kurt. I came to find out that Kurt is a person who is not very honest. I met him from a Facebook post when I was looking for help around my house, and he had told me that he was a veteran as well. So I ended up doing a background check on him and found out that that wasn't true. I distanced myself from that.
Hey, hello, I don't care about him. What I care about is what you're telling me you only got 1,500, not 3,000?
I was given $1,500 on that day, and that's all the money I was paid in cash. I was never written a check. I was never given a contract, which I had requested.
Okay, so what did you do for the 1,500 then?
We demolished the existing deck. We hand shoveled out 5 yards of gravel and wet earth. We excavated out another 2 yards of dirt to get it to the proper ground distance between the IPA decking and the ground. And then we designed the deck, submitted the designs to them. I designed like 4 different layouts based on like post arrangements and like if they wanted to have gutters, because IPA is a sensitive wood. And if you have it in an uncovered spot, it's just going to get ruined. So that's why I suggested the overhang, because they wanted this hardwood deck fully exposed to the roof's water that comes off it. So after that day, communication was spotty. The next step was to dig the holes for the posts and lay the posts, but it was early spring and there was a lot of weather. The humidity would preclude us from pouring cement in those post holes. So I had been relaying this to Colin, and then there was a Friday, apparently after we had dug, where Colin told me, "Why aren't you here? You're supposed to be here." I was hired as an independent contractor, and I told him that it wasn't a good day for this work. And then after that, he told me that he no longer wanted me to be on the job site. So I was told not to come back to the job site. Weeks later, I start receiving, demanding texts and threats from Colin saying I owe him $4,000. They had a state policeman call me and not identify himself and start accusing me of contractor fraud and threatening that I was going to go be put in jail and that I'm a felon. I'm not. And I told him that he needs to talk to my lawyer, and he hung up, and I never heard another thing from him. The next thing I got was the small claims summons.
What's your hourly rate?
My hourly rate?
Yeah, how do you
Depends on it depends on the job, but I generally don't charge per hour. I charge based on the task that we're completing.
And so what were you going to charge on this job?
Well, the entire job from start to finish, I had quoted that I said it would take about $6,000. And that was just an estimate offhand while I'm standing there on the job site. You know, generally for something that is hand excavation, I will charge $75 per hour per person on the site. Generally, if I'm coming out to, you know, labor for another contractor, I'm not the one who sets the terms of the payment generally. Okay. Usually I'm being told what I'm being paid. In this case, I feel like the numbers that they're throwing out there, like I never received $4,000. I never received $3,000. I don't have any check statements that I deposited in my bank. I was paid cash on the day that I worked for the work that I did. And that's it. Their misrepresentations. I don't know what else, how the job went down or anything, because I wasn't there very long. I'm not the contractor. And even though I had requested to be paid by check, and I had requested to have some sort of labor contract supplied for us to agree upon, none of those things were provided. And then I was excused from the job based on expectations that are not fitting for an independent contractor. And then I'm being accused of stealing now. My reputation is being threatened, and I disagree with almost everything he says in his narrative. I've never received any of the evidence. There's no check statements. I was not paid $3,000. I was paid for the work I did the day of, and I wasn't paid for any of the time, design, or energy I took before. So honestly, like, in my opinion, I'm owed money for this, but you know, this isn't something that I enjoy to go through this process. This is my first time going through this process. And I'm, you know, just plainly baffled by the accusations that are being made without merit or evidence.
Okay, so I'm going to give Mr. Detmer and Mr. Brower a chance to comment on any of your testimony or add anything, beginning with Mr. Detmer.
Yes, Your Honor. I don't know how you can address, how I can address someone who speaks one untruth after another, one misrepresentation after another. This simply stated, he asked for $6,000 to build this deck. He showed up morning and was gone by noon, according to my spouse, and kept $3,000. We, in turn, offered to pay him $500 for the time he was at the house, which was way more than we should have, but we just wanted to move on.
Mr. Detmer, excuse me for interrupting, but it was actually Mr. Brower was the one who I guess was that like eyewitness to this whole transaction. So maybe I should hear from him.
Yeah, feel free to.
Because Mr. Brower, I mean, speak to this. Mr. McGregor denies ever getting this $3,000. So maybe you can tell me, was it paid by check? Was it paid in cash? What were was it done by Venmo? Just how was this done?
Sure. So I received the check on the 1st and deposited it into my business account. And the next day was our first starting date when Mr. McGregor showed up to work.
So the check you're talking about was the check you got from Mr. Detmer in the amount of $4,000.
That's correct.
Okay.
It cleared by the next day, which was our first day of work. I got them started on the job and helped them shovel a little bit. And then I went and withdrew $4,000 cash. I came back and put it on his front seat of his truck. I was working on another job at the time and they seemed like they were off and running. So I left. I would like to state that any design work was never received by me.
Hang on. No, I'm more concerned about this $4,000 you put on the guy's truck seat.
Sure. Yeah, his truck,
like in an envelope or what?
Yep. I took the withdrawal slip with me, which is
where was Mr. McGregor when you put $4,000 of cash on the seat of his pickup truck?
He was right there. And I told him, I said, I got your down payment for the job. And he said, great.
Okay. All right. So he was physically present. It's not like you
correct
left it there and it was unattended and.
No, it was right next to the job site right there. And I referenced to him that it's in his front seat and he said, great, we'll keep working.
Okay. And at that point, the truck is like within 10 yards, 100, how close was the truck?
20 feet, 15 feet, like right there, right on the job site.
Okay. So, all right. Okay. And so then the next question was, he did some, I think you stated earlier that McGregor did a few hours of work and left the job and never came back.
That's correct.
Okay. All right, let me review some of these materials again. I may have another question or two for each of the parties.
Can anybody hear me?
Who's that?
I'm I apparently waiting in the courtroom. I'm not sure if I'm in the right place. So we had a 10:30.
Yeah, keep waiting. We're not ready for you yet, whoever you are.
Okay.
Who are you?
My name is Brian and Jerry Lynn Decker.
All right. So anyway, just hang on. Mute. In fact, if you could mute yourself, that would be good.
Absolutely. Thank you.
God help me with this Zoom.
I would like to point out on narrative page 2, the plaintiff's statement is directly opposed to what their statements are in person. They're saying that they wrote me a check, and here they're saying they paid me cash. I'd also like to mention that the number that they have provided as my cell phone number is wrong.
It was his advice.
Deposit the check into the.
Okay, so I just took additional time reviewing not only the narrative Mr. Detmer provided, but also the written statement of Mr. Brower, and looked over my notes here that I took when Mr. McGregor was testifying. And I do, and obviously the focus of my concern was how this 3,000 was given. That seems to be the big factual issue, because the defendant is denying ever even having received it. But I do find that I am crediting Mr. Brower's testimony, who I've never met before, as far as I know. And I do find that his statement about the 3,000 being paid directly to Mr. McGregor in cash is to be credited, and I do find that did occur. And then I must find whether there was any work done for the 3,000, and I find that really consistent with both the defendant and Mr. Brower's testimony. It looks like Mr. McGregor was on the job site for a while, but certainly not to do $3,000 worth of work. And I do find that the complaint has been proven by the testimony of the plaintiff and Mr. Brower, and I will find Mr. McGregor liable then for the 3,000 and the court costs of $136 for a total of $3,136.
Objection, Your Honor.
Right. I'm going to sign the judgment, and you'll each get a copy of this in the mail. And I thank you both for the way you presented this.
Is there an appeals process?
There would not be an appeal. So
I have a few questions for you based on your statements just now.
Yeah, I don't do questions and answers. We're done. Okay.
We're done.
There's
okay.
No appeal.
So you just helped your buddy out just to railroad a disabled veteran. I hope you feel good about yourself. Hope you feel good about yourself from stealing from someone who's a father and who's doing labor for somebody who can tell lies like this. Look at the narrative and how unfactual it is compared to their verbal statements. And I have a witness as well. I just didn't think that
you're being muted right now. We'll see you next time. Maybe next Veterans Day. Who knows? All right. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chip.
Yep.